Okay, new cake flavors, not quite chocolate, not quite vanilla, but a little bit of both. Marble cake is when you have both chocolate and vanilla cake batters and you swirl them together in your cake pan so it gives this really cool design. I've streamlined this recipe for us so that we only have to make one cake batter and then make a little change at the end to turn half of it into a chocolate cake. Okay, I'm at my desk right now because I'm about to enter in the marble cake recipe into my website, which has the cake recipe generator, the Cakulator. So I don't typically say the ingredient amounts in my cake videos because my cakes can be baked in different sizes, and that's gonna affect the ingredient amount. So today I'm doing mini cakes, but all of my recipes are written that way such that you can bake cupcakes, you can bake like 6-inch cakes or 8-inch cakes. It totally depends on whatever you choose. And then this video kind of acts as just like a technique tutorial, which is basically gonna be the same no matter what size you choose. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump in and I'll show you how I make my marble cake.
Okay, we're gonna do our dry ingredients first. So you're gonna need a large mixing bowl because we're also gonna use this bowl later on to make our chocolate part of the batter. So to that bowl, add your cake flour, baking powder, and salt and whisk that for about 30 seconds. Set that aside and let's make our chocolate paste. So to a small bowl, add your Dutch processed cocoa, hot boiling water, and it does have to be boiling. That is going to help activate that cocoa flavor, and then your baking soda. Stir that until you get a paste, and what the baking soda is doing is not helping the cake rise, it's helping the chocolate paste get a really dark color so that when you add it to the batter, it gives us a pronounced chocolate ribbon. Now let's do the liquid ingredients, which is milk and sour cream. And when you mix them together in your small cup, if you find that you have a lot of lumps, what I do is I just stick it in the microwave for about 30 seconds until all the lumps are gone and the milk is kind of room temperature, and then you're good to go. So set that aside. Okay, let's make the cake batter now. So add your butter to the bowl of your stand mixer with the paddle attachment. Then once it's smooth, add your granulated sugar. Hopefully you have better aim than I do, and your vanilla extract, and let that run for about 5 minutes, scraping once during that time. After the 5 minutes, it's time to add the oil. So I always measure by weight. So I'm gonna pull this bowl off and place it on my scale and weigh out my oil, but you can just pour your oil in if you measured it by volume. Then you're gonna let your mixer run for another 2 minutes on medium speed, after which it will look like this. So pretty white, very sandy because of all the sugar, but a little bit fluffy as well. Okay, now it's time for the egg yolks, and I always put mine in a bowl. It's just easier to do this step that way. So just add one egg yolk at a time, making sure that the previous one is mixed in before you add the next. So next are the whole eggs, so I just crack those into that same bowl, and it's the same thing, making sure that the previous one has been mixed in before adding in the next one. And now you can kind of see why I call this my golden vanilla cake. It just has this really pretty color because of all the egg yolks. And so after the egg step, you definitely want to scrape it down with a spatula, make sure everything on the bottom has been incorporated thoroughly before we do the last step of alternating. So we prepped everything in the beginning. This should go by super quick. So it's going to go dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. Okay, so we're going to start with the dry. You're going to pour in half of your flour mixture and see how I'm pulsing. I don't want to overmix the flour, so I'm just making sure that the flour is just mixed in, stopping the mixer, and then using my spatula to make sure all the flour from the sides has been mixed in. Now we're going to add half of the wet mixture, which is the milk sour cream. So add it, then pulse just to make sure that it's mixed in, and then use your spatula to scrape the sides down. Now grab your dry ingredients and do the same thing. So add half of the remaining flour, pulse to mix, and then scrape the bowl down. Now we're going to add all the rest of that liquid and mix just until incorporated. This last part I always like to do by hand because it just ensures that we don't overmix the batter, which is actually really easy to do with a stand mixer. So I remove the attachment and I leave the bowl still attached to it because it kind of anchors it to the counter. Then I just pour the rest of that flour mixture in and use my spatula to gently stir it all in. Now this is my trusty golden vanilla cake batter, so if you're just making your cakes or cupcakes, you could just use this immediately, but since we're going to be making the marble cake, we have to split it in half so that we can flavor half of it with chocolate. So what I do is I always know the weight of my bowls. I have them actually written underneath. I know they're 658 grams, and so then I subtract subtract that from the total amount on my scale to get the amount of batter, and then divide that into 2 and pour that into my spare bowl. So if you don't have a scale, you can definitely do it by volume by just measuring out how many cups are in there total and dividing that by 2. You might be able to eyeball it as well. I don't think adding the chocolate paste is going to dramatically affect the cake in any way if you mismeasured it by 1 or 2 ounces. Okay, so just take one of your bowls and add all of that chocolate paste and gently stir until it's uniform in color. Then grab your cake pans, and today I'm going to be making mini cakes, but it's going to be the same technique whether you make large cakes or small cakes, but I just take a small scoop and alternate the vanilla and chocolate cake flavors. Once all the cavities have been filled, tap it on the countertop to settle the cake batter. So to accentuate the marbling design, you can either use a butter knife. I have a skewer here. You just want to use the blunt end, especially when you use silicone molds or cake pans that are lined with parchment. You can scratch the bottom with the sharp end, and then you just want to kind of swirl it around in the batter to make the design. Bake these in the middle of an oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So for these mini cakes, it was about 22 minutes, but remember you can use my calculator and bake any size of cake that you want, and the timing is going to be based on your size. Now for these mini cakes, I let them cool in the pan for about 10 minutes before I leveled off their tops. It's really easy to do using the silicone mold because you just use the mold as a guide and use a serrated knife, and you can kind of slice off the uneven tops. But it's also so that I could show you the inside of these cakes, which are actually really gorgeous. I use these mini cake layers for some marble lunchbox cakes, and I initially got this flavor as a request from my calculator, and now I understand why it's so popular. I first thought that the chocolate was going to overpower the vanilla, but you can taste both chocolate and vanilla cake in one bite, so it is perfect for the person who wants both flavors in one cake.